In our headlines on this Wednesday afternoon, May 17th. President Yoon Suk-yeol is hosting his Canadian counterpart Justin Trudeau today for talks on bilateral efforts in the battery industry as well as regional security. Meanwhile, Economy and Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho calls for the diversification of Korea's export products from cars and chips to display panels and seafood. And in North Korea, Kim Jong-un is seen at a military satellite station amid preparations for the regime's plans to launch its first spy satellite to reportedly counter the US and its allies. We start at the Yongsan presidential office, where President Yoon Suk-yeol will be hosting Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau later this afternoon as their two countries celebrate 60 years of diplomatic ties. Now, this latest summit follows talks in Ottawa during President Yoon's broader visit to Canada last September. On their agenda here in Seoul are collaboration on critical minerals needed for EV batteries and greater intelligence sharing. Their one-on-one will be followed by a joint press conference and an official dinner. Up next, my colleague Song Yu-jin touches upon the potential issues to be addressed during this latest summit between the leaders of Korea and Canada that is scheduled to start in fewer than 2 hours from now.
President Yoon Suk-yeol is meeting Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau on Wednesday afternoon. Marking the 60th anniversary of diplomatic ties between the two countries, Trudeau is visiting Seoul, the first Canadian leader to do so in 9 years. President Yoon and Prime Minister Trudeau last held a bilateral summit in Canada in September 2022. There, the two agreed to build a comprehensive strategic partnership focusing on 5 priorities: human rights, defense and security, cooperation on supply chains and critical minerals, climate change and environment, and health and culture. Based on this, the two countries are likely to discuss further expanding their partnership this time. And with just 2 days left until the G7 summit in Hiroshima, the two leaders will touch upon some of the summit's key issues, like supporting Ukraine and addressing climate change. Trudeau's office has confirmed that the bilateral talks will prioritize collaborating with G7 partners on these two issues.
Ukraine is incredibly important for Canada. There's over 1 million people in Canada that have roots back to Ukraine. And so Trudeau could be advocating for more support around refugees, information sharing agreements, as well as security.
The current Canadian government has been putting a strong emphasis on net zero emissions and transitioning to a greener economy.
So I can imagine the two sides will want to do what they can to help further open the doors and set the stage for closer collaboration between experts and businesses to work on areas such as critical minerals, developing cleaner sources of energy, or decreasing carbon footprints in existing energy production.
Besides these topics, Canada could also propose a new quadrilateral security dialogue alongside the United States and Japan, following the resumption of the back-and-forth diplomacy between the leaders of Seoul and Tokyo. Japanese media outlets reported in March that Trudeau proposed setting up this 4-way cooperative framework to counter China, North Korea, and Russia when he met with Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida in January. 송유진, Arirang News.
Staying with Seoul-Ottawa ties, back on Tuesday, top foreign policy and trade officials held talks here in the Korean capital city, reaffirming their commitment to security on the economic front. Our foreign ministry correspondent Bae Eun-jae covers that encounter.
Ahead of the summit between the two countries' leaders, on Tuesday, 4 high-level officials from South Korea and Canada's Foreign and Trade Ministries sat down for talks. Seoul's Foreign Minister Park Jin and his Canadian counterpart Melanie Joly, as well as Seoul's Trade Minister An Deok-gun and his counterpart Francois Philippe Champagne, took part in the meeting. South Korea's foreign ministry said the 4 ministers shared their country's policies on economic security and that they exchanged views on ways to strengthen their partnership in various fields, including supply chains of key minerals and semiconductors, as well as green energy like hydrogen and natural gas. This was the first time that the meeting was held after the two sides agreed to establish this high-level dialogue in September last year, during a summit between the two countries' leaders. South Korea's foreign minister called the meeting historic, as this kind of 2+2 economic security dialogue is the first of its kind for both Korea and Canada with any other country.
It can serve as a model for other strategic consultation mechanisms that Korea and Canada will be pursuing going forward.
The country's trade minister also stressed that the dialogue will expand bilateral cooperation.
I'm confident that these meetings will deepen the strategic and comprehensive cooperation between our two nations.
The Canadian foreign minister, who has now visited South Korea 3 times in a span of just 8 months as a foreign minister, stressed that Canada aims to bring the bilateral relationship to another level.
We've always been good friends, but we want to be best friends.
The Canadian trade minister highlighted that bilateral trade volume is now at around $20 billion, and he's looking to expand that.
And I think what we want to build with our Korean friends is supply chain based on values, that would ensure more resiliency and less dependency on other regimes that would be less reliable.
Tuesday's meeting comes a day ahead of the summit between South Korean President Yoon and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, marking 60 years of the two countries' diplomatic relations. The Canadian Prime Minister will visit South Korea before heading to Japan for the G7 summit in Hiroshima. 배은지, Arirang News.
And calls by Canada on Korea to be the best of friends were echoed by Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau during an address at the National Assembly earlier on this Wednesday. Making note of the current climate of uncertainty within the global arena, he added that Canada is poised to promote partnership with Korea on critical minerals, high-tech innovation, and clean energy solutions for a sustainable future. He also shared Canada's commitment to expanding military communication to ensure regional security while supporting South Korea's efforts against a nuclear-armed North Korea. Prime Minister Trudeau is the first foreign head of state to address the Korean parliament in person in 6 years, following former U.S. President Donald Trump. And President Yoon has called for a resolute response to those who challenge global order through coercive diplomacy and security threats. Speaking at the Asian Leadership Conference on this Wednesday, the president enumerated the current challenges to the livelihoods of global citizens and urged for broader solidarity. To take a listen.
안보, 공급망 교란, 기후 환경, 보건 위기는 지구 어느 한 지역에서 발생하더라도 전 지구적으로 급속하게 그 위기가 확산됩니다. 정치 군사적 안보도 과거 지역 안보 개념에서 글로벌 안보 개념으로 바뀌고 있습니다.
President Yoon also highlighted the presence of forces that violate international laws and norms, pointing to North Korea's belligerence and the implications of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. He also pledged to roll out Seoul's global pivotal state policy based on responsibility and contribution to the international community. The president has also called for in-depth discussions that pave the path to policies that well address the interests of immigrants here in Korea. The remarks were shared at the 15th meeting of a special committee on immigrant affairs, which is one of the presidential committees of national cohesion. Making a special appearance at a regular meeting on this Wednesday, President Yoon voiced hopes for comprehensive communication for productive policies. The committee is soon poised to hear from related experts and immigrants themselves with regard to policy proposals. From chips and cars to display panels and seafood, now Korea is looking to diversify its export products to better tackle the lackluster activity on the export front. Our economics correspondent Lee Dae-yeon reports.
South Korea's exports are set for expansion, according to the Finance Ministry on Wednesday. This was discussed during an emergency ministerial meeting hosted by Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho. Chu presented 3 major sectors that the country will focus on: displays, seafood, and supporting SMEs. He said the government will come up with a measure to bolster the display industry, as competition has been heating up due to a rise in relatively new players in the market, such as China. South Korea held the top spot in the global display market from 2004 to 2020 and is aiming to take the title back.
We will make core display technology a national strategic technology and encourage private sector investment. Financial support policies, R&D investment and nurturing talents will also be provided, as well as stabilizing the supply chain.
Detailed measures are set to be revealed by the industry ministry later this week. Strengthening exports from small and mid-sized companies was also on the table. Financial support for SMEs known as policy funds will be provided with unlimited access to these funds until the end of 2024. SMEs with exports of more than $300,000 over the last year will be eligible. The support comes as SME exports dropped almost 8% on year in the first quarter of 2023.
R&D support will be provided for companies with exports of over $5 million, while indirect export companies will be eligible to get policy funds, R&D, and smart factory supports.
Smart logistics centers for SMEs will be built by 2025 at Incheon International Airport, while a global business center will be established in Saudi Arabia later in September to help Korean companies seeking business opportunities in the Middle East. Meanwhile, the country will also develop high added value seafood in order to reach the goal of $4.5 billion worth of seafood exports by 2027. The Ministry of Oceans and Fisheries said it will boost major items including dried seaweed and tuna. It will also make efforts to develop ready-to-eat seafood meals and health supplements while fostering a variety of seafood items such as salmon, fish cakes, and oysters. Lee Dae-hyun, Arirang News.
In other news, foreign investors on the KOSDAQ have been on a selling spree this month to mark the longest span of such activity in 11 years. According to data by the Korea Exchange on this Wednesday, foreign investors net sold for 9 trading days in a row starting May 3rd. In fact, they offloaded some 780 billion won, or around $580 million of stocks during this period. Pundits point out foreign investors largely surrendered stocks of rechargeable battery and biotech companies after disappointing first quarter earnings. In his first media appearance in about a month, North Korea's Kim Jong-un was seen at a military satellite station being briefed by officials there and accompanied by his daughter. Our Kim Jong-sil has details.
Another inspection by the leader himself. According to state media, North Korean leader Kim Jong-un on Tuesday visited the National Aerospace Development Administration to check the final stage of preparation for its first military reconnaissance satellite. It's been a month since Kim made the on-site visit on April 18th, when Pyongyang claimed that its satellite had completed some of the final tests and is ready for launch. Just like last month, for Tuesday's on-site inspection, his daughter Kim Ju-ae also accompanied him. North Korea's state-run Rodong Sinmun reported on Wednesday that Kim has given specific instructions to the Satellite Preparatory Committee and has given a green light to future plans. The regime's leader also stressed the strategic role of the military satellite, saying it's to exercise the right to national sovereignty and self-defense against escalating military confrontations by the US and South Korea. Kim Jong-un also said the successful launch of the satellite stemmed from the regime's desperate demand for national safety. The Rodong Sinmun said the project was in a, quote, binding stage, meaning it's due completion. Some experts said it's possible the actual launch could take place sometime from May to September, saying North Korea will be cautious over the launch due to the cost of failure. Kim Jong-sil, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., discussions are underway between government and congressional leaders to offset a potential default. And while a deal has yet to be sealed, it appears that optimism is in the air. Our Lee Sing-jae has the latest.
U.S. President Joe Biden has held another round of talks on the debt ceiling with House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, and Vice President Kamala Harris. While Biden and the congressional leaders failed to strike a deal on raising the debt ceiling once more to avoid the worst-case scenario of a U.S. default, there's optimism in the air, as McCarthy says a deal could happen by the end of this week. The Democrats, however, were not as optimistic of a deal being reached in that time frame, but they called the meeting productive and direct. The Republicans are refusing to vote to lift the debt ceiling unless Biden and the Democrats agree to spending cuts in the federal budget. With much room for discussion on the matter, the White House announced that while President Biden will leave for Japan this week to attend the G7 summit in Hiroshima, he may skip stops in Australia and Papua New Guinea. This as the June 1st deadline looms closer. Meanwhile, U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen on Tuesday warned that time is running out for Congress to lift the debt ceiling and avert a default. She stressed that every day the Congress is unable to strike a deal, there are increased economic costs that could slow down the U.S. economy. Yellen argued that a default would reverse the country's economic progress, sparking a recession, while at the same time disrupting services such as air traffic control, law enforcement, border security, and national defense. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
And at the U.S. Congress, the creator of ChatGPT has called for the establishment of a new entity to regulate artificial intelligence. Our Yoon covers his remarks.
On Tuesday, local time, Sam Altman, the CEO of the company behind the creation of ChatGPT, spoke at a Senate Judiciary Subcommittee. Speaking before Congress for the first time, Altman called for the U.S. government to consider licensing and testing requirements for the development of artificial intelligence models. He called on Congress to implement new regulations to counter concerns related to the use of the technology.
My worst fears are that we, the field, the technology, the industry, cause significant harm to the world. I think if this technology goes wrong, it can go quite wrong, and we want to be vocal about that. We want to work with the government to prevent that from happening.
Emphasizing that government intervention will be critical to mitigating the associated risks of increasingly powerful AI systems, Altman strongly advocated for the formation of a U.S. or global agency that would license these powerful AI systems and have the authority to take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. The expression of amazement from users at the capabilities of the latest AI tools and applications has quickly been replaced with concerns surrounding the potential for these functions to mislead people, spread falsehoods, violate copyright protections, and even replace human workers. For the past several weeks, members of Congress have met with at least 100 artificial intelligence experts to craft groundbreaking legislation to install safeguards. There are no signs that Congress will be immediately implementing new AI rules, but U.S. agencies will be cracking down on harmful AI products that break existing civil rights and consumer protection laws. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has called for caution when using AI-generated large language model tools. The WHO proposes that clear evidence of benefits be measured before their use in routine healthcare and medicine becomes widespread in order to protect and promote human well-being, human safety and autonomy, and preserve public health. Yoon, Arirang News.
Back here in Korea, imagine the presence of a device that can sense structural collapses in real time to prevent potential disasters. Our Jongun explains.
Accidents from structural collapses occur every year near roads or on steep mountain slopes, and the risk of accidents increases after winter when ice and snow start to melt. The same goes for construction sites. In order to prevent such accidents, it's important to notice very small changes in advance. Existing ground measurement systems are not utilized much in the field because they are expensive and professional data values need to be calculated numerically. A South Korean research team has developed what they're calling Firefly sensors that detect very small ground movements and display them with LED lights. The sensor can be easily attached to the area at risk of collapse with silicone adhesive. It can even detect the slightest movement of 0.03 degrees regardless of the direction. The sensor's LED lights can be seen clearly even in the middle of the day and from up to 100 meters away. Observation data on changes can be transmitted via wireless communication, so an immediate response is possible.
Malfunctions occur due to vibrations when animals touch and pass by the sensor, or where reinforcement work takes place. We developed the sensors with the know-how of the Korea Institute of Civil Engineering and Building Technology.
The developed sensor has an ultra-low power design and can be used non-stop for 1 year without needing to replace the battery. The cost of one unit is as low as 100,000 won, or around $74 US.
It's applied to slopes where landslides or falling rocks occur and can also be used for temporary structure facilities, earth-retaining work, and structure dismantling sites.
The Firefly sensor is currently being piloted and operated in a section of the GTX-A high-speed train route, a chemical plant, a sewage treatment plant, and a lava cave on Jeju Island. Researchers plan to improve sensor performance so that it can be used at earthquake sites as well. Jongun, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Now, the United States Central Intelligence Agency has posted a video on social media platforms urging Russians to come forward with information, including secrets about the war in Ukraine. Appearing on Telegram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook, the Russian-language video is 2 minutes long. It appears to be aimed at Russians who are unhappy with the path the country is taking. The video shows conflicted citizens, including a bureaucrat, secretly communicating on their phones with the US spy agency. Russian leader Vladimir Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov has responded to the video by saying that people talking to the CIA could be tracked by Russia's special services. In Germany, 5 men have been convicted over the theft of jewelry worth more than $123 million. The men, who have links to the Berlin-based crime family, the Remo clan, were found guilty on Tuesday of the 2019 heist at the Greenwald Museum in the city of Dresden. It's one of the largest jewelry heists in the country's modern history. Video from the incident shows masked thieves entering a gallery and using an axe to break into glass casings. Sentences range between 4 years and 4 months and 6 years and 3 months. 4 of the defendants received lighter sentences after entering a plea deal and returning most of the stolen items. However, jewelry that is still unaccounted for is feared lost. A 6th person on trial was acquitted. And finally, service on a Mexico City subway line was temporarily brought to a halt when a chicken got loose on the tracks. A video released on Tuesday by the local metro authority shows workers attempting to catch the bird using brooms and a garbage bag. The incident took place at the capital's Centro Medico station on Line 9 over the weekend. The chicken was eventually captured after a worker threw their coat over the animal. Authorities say train services were quickly restored. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. It feels like the season of heat has already arrived. Gangneung saw record-breaking May warms yesterday with a high of above 35 degrees Celsius, and that heat stayed overnight. And of course, strong sunlight was no help, and many in the area head to the beach yesterday and perhaps today as well. Readings will go down a few degrees, but summer warmth continues in most parts of the country. And those who work in the sun need to take it easy today again. Prolonged exposure to the heat and strong sunshine will affect safety and performance. Drink plenty of water to stay hydrated. Now, highs have risen rapidly, going up 5 to 7 degrees higher than season norms in the 30s in most parts of the southern areas this afternoon. At least air quality will be decent nationwide. Now, rain is in the forecast in Jeju tomorrow at dawn before spreading to southern parts of the country. And along with that rain, the rest of the country will get some relief from unseasonably warm temperatures tomorrow. Now that's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour. We return with our panel session in a few minutes, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.